Epaphroditus, the faithful messenger. In the gleaming iron-fisted empire of Rome, where marble columns rose like the fingers of gods and the boots of soldiers echoed across cobblestone streets that stretched to the ends of the known world, there lived a man whose name the empire would never carve into stone. His name was Epaphroditus, and heaven knew it well. Philippi was no ordinary place. Founded by Philip II of Macedon, father of the great Alexander, whose conquests had once set the ancient world trembling, it sat proud and gleaming in the northeastern reaches of Macedonia, its streets laid out in the Roman fashion, its forum echoing with the language of empire. Rome had claimed it after the great civil wars, and military veterans had been planted there like seeds of Caesar, their presence a living monument to Roman dominion. The city wore its Roman identity like armor, polished and unyielding, its citizens holding the prized status of Roman citizenship with a dignity that bordered on devotion. And yet, into this proud, marble-columned city, a different kind of fire had come. Not the fire of conquest, not the fire of ambition, the fire of the gospel. A tent maker named Paul had walked through Philippi's gates, and behind him came a story that no emperor had authorized and no general could contain. A woman named Lydia, whose heart the Lord had opened like a flower turns toward the sun, had become the first convert on European soil. A community of believers had taken root in Philippi, tender, fierce, and burning with love for the man who had first brought them the light. That man was Paul, the apostle, their father in the faith. And now Paul sat in chains in Rome, his wrists bound by the cold iron of Caesar's justice, his body imprisoned but his spirit unbroken, writing letters by lamplight that would outlast every emperor who had ever drawn breath. News traveled slowly in the ancient world, but the news of Paul's imprisonment had traveled fast, carried on the lips of merchants and sailors, passed from port to port along the great sea roads of the Mediterranean until it arrived in Philippi like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples of anguish through the community of believers. The church gathered. Voices rose in prayer. Hearts heavy with concern turned toward one question that could not be answered by prayer alone. Who will go to him? A Roman prisoner in the first century was not simply a man behind bars. He was a man dependent on the mercy of those outside the walls. No guaranteed meals, no medical care, no provision save what his people brought him. Without a network of devoted supporters, a prisoner in Rome could waste away in the waiting, forgotten by the world. Sustained by nothing but faith, and whatever scraps found their way through the prison door, the church in Philippi had always been generous. Paul himself would later write with deep emotion that they were the only community who had entered into partnership with him in giving and receiving. The gift needed hands to hold it, and the road needed feet willing to walk it. Into that need stepped Epaphroditus, like a man born for exactly this moment. His name in Greek Epaphroditos meant devoted to Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. It was the kind of name a family gave a child in the Greco-Roman world without much thought, a name pulled from the common pool of the age, ordinary in its origin. But, as with all things touched by God, the ordinary had a way of becoming prophetic. For the man who bore a name meaning devoted to love would spend his life demonstrating a devotion that put every earthly love to shame. Paul, writing from his prison cell with the tenderness of a man who chose his words the way a craftsman chooses his finest tools, described Epaphroditus in three ways. He called him a brother, a fellow worker, a man who had stood in the unglamorous trenches of kingdom building, doing the slow, difficult, unspectacular work of planting the gospel in soil that did not always want to receive it. And he called him a fellow soldier, a man who had taken his place in the line when the opposition rose, when the arrows flew, when the cost of calling revealed itself to be far higher than the recruitment speech had suggested. Brother, fellow worker, fellow soldier, three titles, each one a world unto itself, each one earned. He set out from Philippi carrying everything the church could give. The gift was pressed into his hands with the fervor of people who wished they could go themselves. Coins gathered from households that had given beyond their means, provisions carefully prepared for a man in prison who needed more than theology to survive. And woven into every denarius, every wrapped parcel, every item of care, was the unspoken prayer of an entire community. Carry us with you. Let him feel us in this. Let him know he is not alone. The road before Epaphroditus was no gentle pilgrimage. The Via Egnatia, Rome's great eastern highway, stretched westward across the spine of Macedonia with a relentless indifference to the comfort of those who walked it. Dust rose in summer, mud swallowed the road in winter, and the Adriatic crossing that waited at the journey's end was a grey, heaving passage at the mercy of winds that answered to no one. He walked with the church's gift. He walked because Paul needed him. He walked because love had given him a direction. He walked because he was a man who understood that faithfulness is not a feeling, but somewhere on that long road, between the prayers of Philippi and the prison walls of Rome, the body of Epaphroditus began to fail him. The illness came the way illness comes to those who have pushed themselves past the edge of ordinary endurance, quietly at first, then with a ferocity that left no room for denial. Fever moved through him like a fire looking for fuel, burning the weight from his frame, turning his limbs heavy and his vision unsteady. Men who saw him in those days would later speak of how close he had come to the final threshold. He had given everything to make this journey, and the journey had come for everything in return. And here is the mystery of Epaphroditus. Here is the thing that separates the faithful from the merely brave. When word reached Philippi that he was ill, and when word came back to him that they had heard, and that they were afraid for him, he was not worried about himself. He was distressed, Paul tells us, because his people were distressed. The man lying near death in a foreign city was carrying the grief of the people who loved him, tormented not by his own suffering, but by the knowledge that his suffering was causing them sorrow. He was burning with fever and thinking of others. God had mercy on him. The text offers those 4 words like a gift held open in cupped hands, simple and complete. God had mercy on him. Not because Epaphroditus had earned a miracle, not because his suffering had reached a cosmic quota, but because mercy moves the way it will, bending toward those who have spent themselves in love, touching the burning forehead with the cool hand of grace. The fever broke. The body, battered and spent, began its slow journey back to strength. And when Epaphroditus was strong enough to stand, to eat, to lift his eyes to the light of a Roman morning without the darkness crowding in at the edges, Paul made a decision that reveals everything you need to know about the apostle's heart. He sent him home. Not because the work was finished, not because Paul's need had diminished, but because this man who had gambled his life on a road for the sake of others deserved to walk back through a door where people who loved him were waiting on the other side. Paul's instructions to the church in Philippi about how to receive Epaphroditus home are among the most quietly revolutionary sentences in all of ancient literature. He wrote, "Receive him in the Lord with all joy. Honor such men in an empire that built statues to generals, that carved the names of emperors into the faces of mountains, that measured a man's worth by the armies he commanded and the territories he conquered." Paul lifted his pen and pointed to a man who had walked 700 miles with a church's offering, nearly died of illness in a foreign prison, and found his feet again by the mercy of God. Honor this man, not because he stormed a fortress, because he finished the road, not because he raised the dead, because he refused to abandon the living, not because his name would be remembered by empires, because heaven had written it where it counted. The word Paul used for what Epaphroditus had done risked his life was drawn from the gambling halls of the ancient world, parabolia samenos, to throw the dice of one's own existence onto the table of another person's need, to place the whole of your one wild and precious life as a wager in the service of someone who could not help themselves. Epaphroditus began to walk. When the body broke beneath him, he did not use it as permission to turn back. When illness laid him out like a man flattened by a wave, he waited for mercy, received mercy, and rose again. When the mission had cost him more than he had budgeted, he did not revise the cost downward in the telling. He simply delivered what he had been entrusted to deliver, spent everything he had in the delivering, and came home with the quiet dignity of a man who has learned that obedience, not outcome, is the measure of faithfulness. The task was the honor. The road was the altar. The faithfulness was the fragrance. Paul called the gift that Epaphroditus delivered a fragrant offering, a sacrifice acceptable and pleasing to God. These were the words of the ancient temple, words of incense rising through cedar smoke toward an open heaven. Epaphroditus walked back through the gates of Philippi. We do not know exactly what the moment looked like when he arrived. History did not station a scribe at the door to record it. But we can feel it in the gaps between Paul's words, the joy Paul commanded them to receive him with, the honor he insisted they show, the unmistakable tenderness of a man writing about someone he had nearly lost and found again by mercy. Perhaps Lydia was there, the merchant woman whose heart the Lord had first opened on the banks of a river, who had become the cornerstone of everything that followed. Perhaps the jailer was there, the man who had once locked Paul's chains tight and had later washed his wounds in the middle of the night, trembling and transformed. Perhaps children ran ahead of the news of his coming, and women poured into the street, and voices broke like waves against the shore of an ordinary Philippian afternoon. Perhaps Epaphroditus said nothing when he arrived. Perhaps there were no words for what the road had asked of him and what mercy had given back. Perhaps he simply let them hold him. And perhaps that was enough. His name appears in only a handful of verses. No book of scripture carries his name on its cover. No cathedral has been built in his honor. No feast day marks his return from the edge of death. He moves through the text of the New Testament the way certain stars move through the night sky, briefly visible, blazing quietly, gone before most eyes have found them. But Paul found him, and God had mercy on him, and heaven received his offering like incense. The world has always needed its prophets and its apostles, its preachers and its kings. It has needed the ones who stand before multitudes and split the darkness with a word, whose names echo down through the corridors of time like the sound of a great bell. But it has always needed Epaphroditus more. It has needed the ones who carry things without asking to be celebrated for the carrying. The ones who walk when others deliberate. The ones who fall ill in the middle of the mission and, when mercy restores them, pick up what they were carrying and complete the journey. The ones who are distressed not by their own pain, but by the grief of those who love them, who lie near death in a foreign city and spend their diminished breath worrying about the people back home, the ones who can be sent and who go. Epaphroditus carried a gift across an empire. He nearly left his life on the road. God called it a sweet fragrance. Paul called it honorable. The church in Philippi wept when he came through the door. Some stories do not end in resurrection. They end in return. And return, sometimes, is miracle enough.